Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining this introduction into Spaceman's Frozen Beverage Training Series. My name is Tyler, and in this class we are going to introduce you to Spaceman's frozen beverage equipment, how it works, as well as detailed information on the proper cleaning, operation, and maintenance of your frozen beverage machine. If you haven't done so already, I'd highly recommend checking out our Spaceman introduction video that introduces you to our company, the different types of equipment that we produce, and how we support and service the equipment that we sell. We'll post links to that video and future training classes in the video description down below. If you've already watched the soft serve introduction class, this class is going to follow a very similar path, and a lot of things may sound similar or the same. However, please stick around because while there are some similarities in cleaning and maintenance, there is some important differences between soft serve and frozen beverage machines to be aware of. The frozen beverage and soft serve introductions are our longest classes, but this class is filled with a ton of important information that's important for future classes. First, we're going to start by taking a deeper dive into the components of the frozen beverage machine, identify what parts are, what they're called, and what they do inside of the machine. Then, we'll talk about the cleaning and maintenance requirements in general. In this training class, we won't be going into the specifics and details of cleaning or troubleshooting. If that's what you're looking for, we'll post links to those classes and guides in the video description down below. But I highly recommend sticking around and watching through this class to get some good tips and tricks that aren't covered in the step-by-step guides. Finally, we'll provide some tips and best practices to give you an understanding of how to avoid and resolve some common operational issues. Alright, let's get started. First up, we're going to break down the machine and see what makes our frozen beverage machines function. Over the past decade, just like our soft serve lineup, Spaceman Frozen Beverage Machines have gone through 3 different major revisions that you may encounter. Currently, in the United States, we are selling the version 2 and version 3 style of components. We're currently in the process of transitioning the entire line to version 3. In general, the operation of the machines is the same throughout all 3 versions, but the parts have been updated or modified to reduce the amount of cleaning parts and make the machines easier to clean. As we go through the cleaning parts, you'll see the different versions and the differences between them. As of the publishing of this class, we are currently in the process of upgrading all new models to the version 3 components, and within a year, all new machines will ship as a version 3. From the outside, the frozen beverage machine is going to look similar to a soft serve machine. Up top, we have a storage hopper. This is where liquid product is stored. For most of our frozen beverage machines, product in this hopper is stored at a food-safe, chilled, but not frozen temperature. Most Spaceman machines also come equipped with a hopper agitator. This is a magnetically driven mixing blade that will help keep the liquid product in the hopper mixed so that it does not separate and settle. Anytime the storage hopper is actively cooling, this blade will be turning. The hopper agitator is only designed to prevent pre-mixed product from separating. It is important to note that this blade is not generally strong enough to mix powder or liquid products together. Even with liquid syrups that are mixed with water, we still strongly recommend that product be pre-mixed before pouring into the machine. Trying to mix syrup and water in the hopper will often lead to excessive freeze-ups. Liquid product from the hopper then flows down into the freezing cylinder, where it is churned and frozen. Unlike soft serve, in most frozen beverage machines, product flows through a connector tube without an air tube, sometimes referred to as a carburetor or injection tube. This is because most customers desire a more dense and less airy, slushy product being dispensed. When no air tube is installed, no additional air will enter the freezing cylinder with the product. In some cases, such as when the machines are being used with extra thick products like acai or milkshakes, we do recommend adding an air tube to add the extra air into the cylinder. With an air tube installed, the product is mixed with air before entering the freezing cylinder, and this additional air adds what is referred to as overrun and makes the dispensed product lighter and less dense. Frozen beverage air tubes are very similar to soft serve air tubes, except for that the product inlet is larger. This will keep the overrun a lot lower, which is common for most frozen beverage drinks. Inside the freezing cylinder, the product is agitated and churned by the beater, which is sometimes also referred to as an auger. On version 1 and version 2, this beater has scraper blades installed that scrape the ice crystals off of the cylinder walls as they freeze. The scraper blades are the same ones used on some of our soft serve machines, and similarly, in version 1 included a metal clip, and in version 2 are a single strong piece of plastic. All version 1 machines can use the updated version 2 scraper blades, and we highly recommend making this upgrade. So, if you ever come across a machine that is still using metal clips on the scraper blades, it's time to upgrade. Version 3 beaters are a little different. They are a single piece beater with no additional scraper blades required. They fit together and much tighter in the freezing cylinder and significantly reduce the amount of cleaning parts. Unfortunately, version 3 beaters are not backwards compatible with older machines, so you cannot upgrade a version 1 or version 2 to a version 3. In all cases, the beater is turned using a drive shaft that is located at the rear of the cylinder. This drive shaft is often overlooked by operators during the cleaning process. However, removing this drive shaft and its gasket and properly lubricating them is very important to proper machine operation. On version 3 beaters, this drive shaft is built into the beater, making it easier to remove and clean. On version 1 and version 2, this drive shaft must be removed during each cleaning and cleaned thoroughly. At the front of the beater is a beater guide, which is sometimes referred to as a bearing. This plastic piece is a wearable part and helps keep the beater centered in the freezing cylinder. It also prevents expensive dispensing doors from wearing out. As I mentioned earlier, unlike soft serve, frozen beverage beaters are not easily upgradable from version 1 through version 3. The scraper blades can be upgraded from version 1 to version 2, but the beaters themselves cannot be. This is largely because of the part that sits in the middle of the beater, which is called the torque rotor. The torque rotor is the primary part that is going to tell the machine when the product is frozen correctly. During normal operation, as the beater rotates frozen product in the freezing cylinder, that product will put pressure on the torque rotor. The more frozen the product is, the more pressure it will place on the torque rotor. In order to ensure that the torque rotor works consistently and keeps your product consistent, it is very important to lubricate the O-ring on the front of the torque rotor where it goes through the dispensing door, and replace it regularly as it wears out. On the back side of the torque rotor, in version 1 and version 2 machines, it is important to make sure the torque guide is installed correctly and replaced often as it also wears out. Do not lubricate the torque guide at the back of the cylinder. This will cause it to work incorrectly. You only lubricate the O-ring at the front. Version 1 torque rotors have a black cylindrical torque guide that sits inside the drive shaft, while version 2 torque rotors have a white top hat shaped torque guide that sits in the back of the beater. On version 3, there is no torque guide. The torque rotor simply rides in the back of the beater. When you purchase a standard Spaceman wearable part tune-up kit, it will include both version 1 and version 2 parts. It's important to use the correct parts for your machine. Version 3 machines do not have the torque guide, so version 3 machines have a newer, updated tune-up kit that is exclusively for version 3 parts. So when you're purchasing a tune-up kit, it is very important to make sure that you buy a tune-up kit that is labeled for V3 for any machine with a single-piece beater. Now let's take a look at the front of the machine. At the very front of the freezing cylinder, we have the dispensing door assembly. On the dispensing door itself, there is a door gasket that seals the door to the front face of the freezing cylinder. For frozen beverage machines, this gasket is not directional, meaning that it can be installed in either orientation to work correctly. Newer door gaskets with ridges on the outside do not need to be lubricated, as they seal better than the older flat gaskets. All newer tune-up kits should have these newer door gaskets, and they are backwards compatible from version 3 all the way back through version 1. Next in the dispensing door assembly, we have the draw valve, sometimes referred to as a dispensing valve. This valve is opened and closed to start and stop the dispensing of frozen product through the dispensing door. For frozen beverage, there is only one type of valve for all machines. Frozen beverage draw valves only have 2 O-rings that have to be cleaned and lubricated during every cleaning. At the bottom of the draw valve is an ice buster. This metal part breaks up ice chunks that will form at the front of the dispensing door. The ice buster is installed by rotating the draw valve 90 degrees, inserting the ice buster, and rotating the draw valve back to lock it in place. Up top on the draw valve, we have a dispensing handle and a pin to secure the handle in place. Behind the draw valve is the torque arm. This is sometimes referred to as the torque rod. This arm is what the torque rotor turns as more and more pressure is applied to it. At the top of this torque arm, it is connected to our viscosity mechanism, which is a spring-loaded bracket. We'll talk more about how these controls work and the differences between version 1 and version 2 and 3 later on. For now, it's just important to know that the torque arm must be installed for the machine to operate correctly. Without the torque arm installed, the machine will overfreeze. Finally, on the front of the dispensing door, we also have a prime plug for each cylinder. This prime plug is another one of the most overlooked but most important parts of the frozen beverage machine. It is used to fill the cylinder with fresh liquid product to the correct level after a cleaning. If the cylinder is not primed after cleaning, there will not be sufficient liquid product in the freezing cylinder and the machine will experience a freeze-up. To fill the cylinder after a cleaning, you simply unscrew the prime plug until you can hear air coming out. Once the cylinder is filled, simply retighten the prime plug until air or product stops leaking out of the front of the door. It is important to remove and clean this prime plug as product can get trapped and prevent air from escaping while priming the machine. Standing back from the machine, there's just 3 parts that we haven't touched on yet. The hopper lid up top simply covers the storage hopper to keep it clean. There are 2 pins on the top of the machine to hold your lid while filling with fresh product. Each machine also includes a main drip tray to catch drips and condensation from the front of the machine. And last but not least, in many machines there is also an internal drip tray. This internal tray should be removed and cleaned regularly. If your machine is being cleaned and lubricated properly, this tray should only be filled with condensation. If you see excess product or lubrication in this tray, it's an indication that something isn't right with your cleaning, such as using too much or too little lubrication, or that it's time to replace your drive shaft gasket if it's worn out. Let's take one final look at all of the parts that we just talked about. You can see the differences from version 1 to version 3 and the amount of cleaning parts that have been reduced throughout these upgrades. Now that we're familiar with all of the parts, we're going to take a look at the frozen beverage controls and how Spaceman Frozen Beverage Machines operate. Spaceman Frozen Beverage Machines, up to and including version 3, are all analog, meaning that there is no complex or complicated digital controller that is used to freeze the product down. There is also no display to change or set various settings. There is one analog controller for each flavor, and each analog controller has a main power switch, and sometimes an additional standby switch that are used to control it and change the various modes. Spaceman Frozen Beverage Machines all have 4 default operating modes. The first mode is wash mode, which is accessed by turning the power switch to the faucet icon. This mode is used to turn on only the beater in the freezing cylinder. No cooling will be applied during this mode. This mode is used to help clean your machine and agitate water or sanitizer without the risk of freezing up. Freeze mode is accessed by turning the power switch towards the snowflake icon. This mode is the primary mode you'll use when operating the machine. In this mode, product is frozen and held at a desired firmness, which we refer to as a viscosity. Some frozen beverage machines also have a standby mode. This is accessed by pressing the standby button with a night icon only when the main power switch is in the freeze mode. Standby mode is used overnight to thaw out frozen product in the freezing cylinder, but still keep it at food-safe temperatures. This mode is useful to prevent frozen beverage product from being overbeaten or overfrozen. Finally, we have a stop mode. This is accessed by turning the power switch to the middle position. This is the default mode where nothing on the machine will be operating. It is important to note that even in stop mode, the machine still has power inside. The only way to turn power off to the controls is to unplug the machine. Before we move on, there are a couple important notes about the operating modes that I want to talk about a little further. One common misconception is that all frozen beverage machines use thermostats to control the firmness of the product. This is not the case for Spaceman machines. Our frozen beverage machines are purely mechanically controlled in freeze mode. The thermostats located inside the machine are only used for the hopper, where product is kept refrigerated, but not frozen, and during the standby mode. In standby mode, either the thermostat or the mechanical controls can stop cooling in the freezing cylinder. In freeze mode, the thermostat is ignored and only the mechanical controls are used to start and stop cooling in the freezing cylinder. The standby mode is indicated by a blue light on newer models and a yellow light on older version 1 models. This light should be off anytime that you want the product frozen into a slushy consistency. This light should only be illuminated when you want to actually thaw the product in the freezing cylinder overnight. Now that you have a good understanding of Spaceman Frozen Beverage Machines and what the different parts are called and the different operating modes, let's talk a little bit about cleaning and maintenance requirements. As mentioned before, this class is not going to dive into the step-by-step details of cleaning and maintenance. We'll be going over that in the next couple of classes. When we talk about cleaning your frozen beverage machines, we're referring to fully draining, rinsing, disassembling, washing all the parts, and then putting the machine back together with fresh lubrication, sanitization, and then adding fresh product. This means pulling the front door off of the machine and taking everything apart. While that may seem like a lot of work and a daunting task, it only takes about 30 to 45 minutes to do properly once you've done it a few times. Cleaning is the most important thing that you can do if you want to serve the highest quality of product and have the least amount of downtime. When it comes to cleaning intervals, our best recommendation is to clean at least as often as your local health code requires. However, the more often you clean, the better. Operators that integrate more frequent cleaning into their standard operating procedures have machines that last the longest, cost the least to operate and maintain, and rarely break down. The product that they serve also tends to be the highest quality and maintain the best consistency. Let's now take a look at the lubrication and sanitizer used during cleaning. Using Spaceman High Performance Lubrication is strongly recommended when cleaning your frozen beverage machine. If you use the wrong type of food-grade lubrication in your machine, it may cause issues or failures, especially if the lubrication is not rated for the appropriate temperature range for a Spaceman frozen beverage machine. If Spaceman lubrication is not available, it's always best to reach out to our customer success team to make sure that the lubrication you're using and have access to is okay. For sanitizer, we strongly recommend a food-grade, no-rinse sanitizer with a milkstone remover, such as Saniturgent, Sterashine Green Label, K5, or other similar sanitizers. We do not recommend using any sanitizers that include bleach, are intended for food prep surfaces, or require rinsing after use. The last thing I want to mention for a full regular cleaning is the cleaning brushes. Each Spaceman machine is shipped with a set of cleaning brushes with different sizes to clean the various parts of the machine. A few important overlooked places are the connection tube between the cylinder and the hopper, and the rear shell bearing at the back of the cylinder. The air tube is also important to brush clean if you are using one. All of these areas are important to brush clean during each cleaning, and using the right size brush is very important. For the rear shell bearing, for example, using a small black brush is advised as the lubrication will stain the clear or white brushes. Spaceman offers all of our brushes as a kit, and brushes, just like a sponge or a rag, should be replaced regularly as they get dirty and can get contaminated with bacteria. Between a full cleaning, there are a few parts in your frozen beverage machine that should be cleaned several times a day, or at a minimum once per day. The exterior of the machine should be wiped down regularly, especially in places with spills or drips. You can also use a clean, sanitized rag to wipe off the bottom of the draw valve of excess product. The drip trays should be taken off, cleaned, and sanitized several times a day. Hopper agitators should also be removed at least once per day, cleaned, sanitized, and placed back in the hopper. Newer hopper agitators are available that have handles to make this process easier. If you are using an air tube with your frozen beverage machine, it should also be removed, cleaned, sanitized, and reinstalled at least once per day. If you are using the standby mode overnight, we recommend doing this cleaning once in the evening before placing the machine in standby mode, and once again in the morning when taking the machine out of standby mode. All of these additional cleaning steps are covered in more detail in the next class when we go through each step of cleaning. We have a lot of great resources when it comes to cleaning to fit every learning style and environment. Included with each machine is our operator manual, which has detailed instructions and pictures of all the cleaning steps. We also have a quick reference cleaning guide, which is a laminated sheet and sleeve that can be attached to the side of your machine for quick cleaning step reminders. Online, we have our mobile-friendly, step-by-step cleaning guides with animated pictures, which is the best tool to give to your new or existing staff to follow along and learn how to clean their Spaceman frozen beverage machine. We also have these classes and other videos published on our YouTube channel for going over this process for a variety of our older and newer machines. There is no shortage of good information and resources to properly train your staff how to clean and operate their Spaceman Frozen Beverage Machine. On top of regular cleaning, your Spaceman Frozen Beverage Machine also needs regular maintenance. There are two levels of regular maintenance: replacing wearable parts and internal preventative maintenance that is performed by a service technician. Replacing wearable parts is the maintenance that any operator can do and is performed during a routine cleaning. Going back to the parts we talked about earlier, there are several plastic parts, O-rings, and gaskets that will wear out and need to be replaced on regular intervals. We offer these parts in packages that are called tune-up kits. We also offer them bundled together with sanitizer, lubrication, and scraper blades in what we call a maintenance kit. Even if these parts don't look visibly worn out, it is important to replace them regularly. Over time, parts like O-rings can gather bacteria, swell, or wear down and prevent parts from moving correctly. Removing and replacing these wearable parts regularly is very important from both a health and safety and a machine operation standpoint. These are the parts that we recommend replacing every 3 to 6 months and are available in the tune-up kit. The busier you are and the more product you serve, the more often we recommend replacing these parts. First up is the tune-up kit, which includes all of the O-rings, the drive shaft gasket, the dispensing door gasket, the torque rotor guide, and the beater guide. In addition to the tune-up kit, we also recommend replacing scraper blades regularly to maintain a good product consistency for version 1 and version 2 machines. If you have a version 3 machine, it's important to know that there is a different tune-up kit specifically for version 3 machines. The version 3 tune-up kits are very similar to earlier kits, however there are fewer parts because the version 3s do not have as many parts, such as scraper blades. In addition to wearable parts, we strongly recommend having a service technician perform an internal preventative maintenance at least once per year. Think of this as comparable to changing the oil in your car. You need to do it regularly or eventually you'll end up on the side of the road broken down. Your Spaceman Frozen Beverage Machine is the same way. The busier you are and the more often you use your machine, the more often we recommend preventative maintenance. The same goes for machines exposed to additional dust, dirt, and debris, such as machines that are near a drive-thru or next to a kitchen preparation area. During a preventative maintenance, we recommend having a service technician perform the following. First, clean out the condensing coils of dirt, dust, and debris. This keeps the refrigeration system running at peak performance and prevents expensive components like compressors from failing. Next, we recommend to inspect and tension or replace all internal belts, such as the main drive belt, as well as the hopper agitator belts. Next, we want to clean out the inside of the machine of all product, dirt, and debris. The cleaner the inside of the machine is, the better the parts will work. Next, we'll verify the motor and compressor performance. Check capacitors, bearings, etc. for signs of additional wear and tear or degraded performance. Finally, we'll inspect and replace any switches or moving parts for damage or poor operation. Most importantly, we want to check the torque switch, torque bracket, and other viscosity components for cleanliness and smooth movement. If these parts are not clean, are damaged, or don't move smoothly, the machine will not operate correctly. In some cases, we also recommend checking and replacing the viscosity spring as they can wear out over time. In the United States, Spaceman offers a few different preventative maintenance options to our customers. We have full guides and resources available to our service partners and can provide that to any of our customers upon request if they'd like to call out and use their own service providers. We have managed service and subscription options available to dispatch this preventative service for you so that you don't ever have to worry about it. Some of our managed service options even include the replacing of wearable parts mentioned above, along with extended parts warranties so our customers only have to focus on regular cleanings and day-to-day operations. For more information on what's available in the United States, please reach out to our customer success team. Let's quickly recap what we've gone over so far. First, Spaceman Frozen Beverage Machines have a variety of different parts that you should be familiar with by now. Machines have several different operating modes to freeze or store product and help during the cleaning process. Third, frozen beverage machines have wearable parts that need to be replaced on regular intervals. Fourth, Spaceman sells all of our parts in a variety of different ways to fit a variety of different needs. Finally, cleaning and maintaining your frozen beverage machine regularly is the best way to reduce downtime and minimize your costs. In this next section, we're going to briefly go over some configuration options that you may see on frozen beverage machines. Unlike soft serve machines, there are not as many different options for frozen beverage. All machines are gravity fed and there is no air pump option. Light boxes can be installed on the front of Spaceman machines to add extra space for merchandising. These light boxes can only be installed during manufacturing and cannot be installed after the fact. In newer version 3 machines, the light box comes standard and is not an additional option. However, you may see light boxes on older models and it is referenced by the letter L in the model name. Water cooling or glycol cooling is also an option on most Spaceman frozen beverage models. Noted by the letter W, these machines use an external water source or glycol chiller rather than a compressor and fan to cool the product. Large cylinder frozen beverage machines also have a spindle mixer option. This option is noted by the letter S and includes a mounting point and a trigger for a spindle mixer to be mounted on the front of your machine. Outside of configuration options, we also have a few different accessories that are available for frozen beverage machines. First, we have an air chute, which is an additional part that can be installed after the fact. It is used to direct air upward rather than out the side or back of the machine, and is available for almost every Spaceman frozen beverage machine. We also offer a rolling cart or dolly that can be used with any frozen beverage countertop machine that we offer. We do have other options and configurations available, especially in international markets, but these are the most common options and configurations that you'll find inside the United States. Before we move on to the cleaning and troubleshooting classes, let's talk a little bit about frozen beverage product in general and some important concepts to understand and watch out for as you begin operating your frozen beverage machine. Frozen beverage is a lot simpler than soft serve in terms of dispensed product. In standard frozen beverage machines, we are primarily concerned about viscosity. Viscosity is a measure of how firm and cold the dispensed product is. The higher the viscosity, the colder and more firm the dispensed product will be. The lower the viscosity, the warmer and softer the product will be. Overrun, which is more important in soft serve, is a measurement of how much the product expands when dispensed, or in other words, how much air is entrapped in the frozen beverage. In most frozen beverage cases, we do not run an air tube, so the overrun will generally be low as no additional air can get into the freezing cylinder. Therefore, overrun will not have as great of an impact on the viscosity as it would in a soft serve machine. When operating a frozen beverage machine, our primary goal is to find and maintain a good viscosity for our product. Unlike soft serve that can have more variation and fluctuations in overrun, most frozen beverage products are a lot easier and a lot more consistent to find and set an appropriate viscosity level. Once you find a good viscosity setting for your product, it should never need to be changed again unless you change your flavor or product mix. So let's talk a little bit more about viscosity, as this is a really important topic when it comes to frozen beverage machines. Some other frozen beverage machine manufacturers use temperature to determine when the frozen beverage product is at a good consistency. Spaceman does not use temperature. Instead, we use a mechanical control system to determine how cold and firm the product is. We refer to this setting as viscosity, and we set viscosity by changing the spring tension on the torque arm. The higher the viscosity setting, the more the spring tension, the harder it is to move the torque arm, which means the product will be firmer and colder. On version 1 machines, we used a screw mechanism to increase or decrease the viscosity. When you tighten the screw, the viscosity level increases. When you loosen the screw, the viscosity level decreases. On version 2 and newer machines, we simplified this to a simple 1 through 6 setting, where 1 is the lowest viscosity and 6 is the highest viscosity. This newer mechanism is a lot more consistent from machine to machine using the same product and is a lot easier to set viscosity. In all frozen beverage machines, this spring connects to the torque arm via a bracket. On version 1 machines, this bracket was a stainless steel arm that stuck through the front of the machine. In version 2 and newer machines, this is a white plastic slider that sits behind the front faceplate. In both mechanisms, the torque arm will move the torque bracket over as the product viscosity increases and will click a torque switch. This switch is what tells the machine that the product is at the desired viscosity and to shut off cooling. So to quickly recap, for all intents and purposes, Spaceman Frozen Beverage Machines work very simply. Whenever the motor is on during freeze mode, the controller will read the torque switch. If that switch is not clicked, cooling will be on to the freezing cylinder. If that switch is clicked, cooling will turn off to the freezing cylinder. The important takeaway from this discussion is that Spaceman machines do not set a temperature to determine the dispensed product consistency. Instead, we use a simple mechanical control to set the viscosity setting, where the higher the viscosity setting, the colder and more firm the product will be, and the lower the viscosity setting, the warmer and softer the product will be. Because the system is mechanical, it's really important that the parts are cleaned and lubricated often and properly, and everything moves smoothly. So why is all of this important? The most common call we get to our service and success departments is for machines that are either freezing up or not freezing. In a vast majority of these cases, well over 80%, there is a simple mechanical fix or missing part that's causing the machine issues. Most operators think that they need to adjust their viscosity setting because the product is suddenly too cold or too warm, when in fact there's something else that's changed that needs to be addressed. Because Spaceman machines use a viscosity setting rather than a temperature setting, once you set your viscosity correctly for a product, you should never have to adjust it again if you always use the same product, mixed the same way, with the same ingredients, and keep your machine clean. If your product suddenly freezes up or stops cooling correctly, there's likely something wrong with the product, the cleaning, or how the controls are moving that needs to be addressed. Getting your viscosity set correctly is very important, and we have an entire class and step-by-step guides dedicated to doing so. For the purposes of this introduction class, just know that if your product consistency suddenly changes, there's likely something else going on that you should address, but please don't jump to just changing the viscosity. If you're ever having issues, our team and our guides are always going to recommend starting with a fresh cleaning and fresh product because there's so many variables in the product consistency equation. We want to eliminate as many of those variables as possible and make sure that the mechanical controls are working smoothly as a first step for all troubleshooting. Let's wrap up this class with some best practices for success and a recap of all of our available resources. All of the information that we cover in these classes is available online in our in-depth knowledge base and throughout all of our step-by-step success guides. I highly recommend that you bookmark these links and share them with your entire staff. Most of the challenges that our customers face are easily avoidable or resolvable without the need for service. This is why we share and publish all of this information so that our customers can better train their staffs to learn to use, operate, and understand how our machines work. Let's talk about a few quick best practices to always make sure you're following when operating your Spaceman Frozen Beverage Machine. First up, always make sure that your machine has 6 inches of clearance on all sides, especially the exhaust sides. Oftentimes, customers will place cups or other things that block the air inlets and exhaust. These inlets are vital to ensuring enough air can get into your machine and exhaust out of your machine. Without adequate clearance, parts will wear out faster and your machine will not work as well. Next, when cleaning your machine, make sure that you wipe off all excess and old lubrication in product. Remove O-rings and gaskets to clean out grooves to prevent bacteria buildup. Removing O-rings takes a few extra minutes, but will help keep your product tasting and looking better. Next, we generally recommend to not use a dishwasher when cleaning your machine. It's a little extra work to hand wash parts, but they will last much longer if you do so. If a dishwasher is a must, definitely do not use a heated drying or a very high temperature wash cycle. These things can warp and damage your parts and wear them out prematurely. Operationally, there's a few best practices to follow. First, we recommend that you always keep your hoppers as full as possible. If you have a 2-flavor machine, we highly recommend keeping the hopper levels equal between the 2 hoppers. Additionally, if you can pre-chill and pre-mix your product before pouring into the machine, this will help out the machine in a number of ways. These recommendations will help keep your product consistent, prevent error codes, reduce downtime, and improve your machine output. Next up, don't leave your machine in low mix overnight, or operate the machine when the low mix indicator is illuminated. This can and will lead to a freeze-up. We strongly recommend to always fill your machine as soon as the low mix indicator is illuminated. Finally, don't try to chase viscosity. If your viscosity setting was set once and the product was coming out good, it will not need to be changed again unless you change your flavors or your product. If your dispensed product suddenly changes, it's most likely something operationally went wrong. Check all of the basic things and start with a good deep cleaning of the machine. It is important to make sure that all parts are installed correctly, lubricated well, and moving freely. With that, we're going to wrap up this frozen beverage introduction class. This was the longest of all of the classes from an information standpoint, and we covered a lot of information about frozen beverage and how our equipment operates. Hopefully, this class has given you a good foundation as you learn more about the cleaning and troubleshooting steps in future classes. The remaining classes in this series are going to go into details about the cleaning processes and basic troubleshooting. For our service partners, we also have additional class series covering advanced troubleshooting, preventative maintenance, and many others. Links to all future classes are posted in the video description down below. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to our customer success team. We're always here to help. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you in the next class.